Also, I wish I'd known how much money we were going to waste, as this is a progressive neuromuscular disease and it has a million stages and they all end up being more downhill. And just when you think you've got one stage down pat and you've bought the level of equipment that you need for then bang, you get the next stage and that becomes defunct. Sometimes in a matter of weeks, and then you've got to buy something else. So, Hi, I'm Leanne Watson. I'm so happy to have you here on our podcast talk show, You, Me and Muscular Dystrophy. I'll be asking 10 questions of each guest, exploring the humanity and experiences of living with MD. I'm so happy to have you here. Welcome to You, Me and Muscular Dystrophy, where we ask 10 questions to people impacted by the many forms of MD to understand how our diagnoses and journeys are different, yet can be similar. Usually I'll interview other people who've been impacted by MD, but today I'm going to start this series with my daughter interviewing me. Now, this seems only fair that I should be the one to get grilled first if I'm expecting to do the same to others. I acknowledge the traditional owners of country, particularly the Wadawurrung people upon whose unceded land I broadcast, and I pay my respect to elders past and present. Take it away, Amy. Where are you broadcasting from?
I am broadcasting from the land of the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people of the Kulin Nation.
Well, you can take over.
Time to grill you.
Yes.
Can't wait.
I know. Thanks
an
for
interesting having me. I've never been on a podcast and I'm joining you, who is now a seasoned expert of broadcast, after Leanne's well life for the last couple of years. So
True.
I am nervous. I hope you're kind and I will be kind to you, probably.
So you're definitely used to asking questions of me.
Yeah, but more requests and favors. Anyway, let's start with hopefully an easy one. Who are you and what's your connection to muscular dystrophy?
Great question. I am Leanne Watson. I am a mother and a grandmother. At the moment, the reason we're here on this podcast is because I have adult-onset limb-girdle muscular dystrophy, and over the last 20 years, that has morphed into, redefining, I guess, or reinventing my life into doing a bit of, my bit towards advocacy for limb-girdle muscular dystrophy and disability in general, which has led to my podcast. And before that was, I still have my blog, my website with blogs. Last year, about 18 months, I had a foray into broadcasting through public radio in my local area of Geelong, which was lovely and a lot of fun. And that's sort of where I start. Yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell for where I've been.
Award-winning broadcast and advocacy, I heard, actually, but maybe we can redo the intro. So I guess there's probably a lot of people who know you and have seen your stuff as now a freshly 60-year-old woman with a disability. But
thank you again for that surprise party. Surprise party of the decade, everybody.
Yeah, the only one I'll be throwing of the decade. But there are others who are probably listening and me who remember you before disability. As you mentioned, this was adult onset. And the majority of your life was lived without a disability. I guess casting your mind back when you're a kid or when you were younger, what pre-diagnosis, what did your grown-up life look like? What was your vision
for my life? Yeah, actually, when you put it like that, being a newly fresh 60-year-old, I've spent nearly a third of my life disabled, but the first 2/3, a bit over 2/3 really, were non-disabled. And my younger life, my vision was pretty well always that I would sort of spend my 20s working, probably a teacher, maybe share housing with a girlfriend, traveling a bit, and then having family and, still sort of traveling and having family and interests and things. Most of that I actually am extremely lucky enough to have achieved. In fact, all of that I've been able to achieve. And I really do recognize my privilege that I've been able to sort of be able to experience the milestones of life unfettered by compromising how I'm living, because the world still isn't designed for someone with disability in all its ways, whether that's through the way things are built or attitudes, that sort of thing. So all in all, my thing that, yeah, so I don't think my life has changed much, except I thought I would be a bit more physically active now in my life. But then a lot of my friends that are around my age have slowed down a bit anyway, to a certain extent. So yeah, that's a pretty broad brush stroke, I guess, in some ways, because my disability now is quite profound, to the point of there's no amount of using the social model of disability or anything else that can whitewash the level of inability and destruction, I guess, that it's now wreaking on my life and your father's, and Gary's life and ours. Yeah, so my imagined grown up life turned out pretty lucky and pretty similar, except I didn't have my 20s as a single woman. I met Gary in high school, and it just all happened. I didn't become a teacher. In the end, I thought working in a bank was a pretty good deal too. How silly of me. And then I, of course, had you, three little cherubs in my 20s. So that's a fair trade off.
Yeah, and speaking from experience, perhaps share houses aren't all that they're cracked up to be either.
Probably not.
So you may have dodged a bullet
Yeah,
uh, in a way there.
I'm sure I did.
I guess though, from being younger, thinking about your adult life, a lot of it hadn't changed because you were fully abled in your 20s, you were fully abled in your 30s, really. And even part of your 40s was kind of, starting to progress, but not the kind of level of inability and kind of everything that it's taken now. So I wonder, if you think about being in your 40s and you've got 3 kids entering their 20s, late teens, mm, what did you picture your 60s looking like? And how has that changed since you were diagnosed?
Yeah, that's a good reframe. I definitely would have seen myself probably a bit like my gran and the type of grandmother your grandma is, which is to say, I would definitely have been see myself a lot more active, like as far as being able to support the parent, like my children, they were having the children, by babysitting, all the physical sort of things, helping in craft, helping them cook, or, just doing all the fun stuff, physical stuff,
But
all the physical stuff with the grandkids. Yeah. So that's definitely hugely, hugely different.
mm,
Yeah. Even things like, like picking them up and hugging them if they fall over when they were quite little, although they're still fairly little, so that can still happen. That sort of thing. Even those
mm,
tiny little grandparent things are pretty awful not to be able to be part of. Once again, I do recognize there are a lot of parents who are, around my level of disability that aren't able to do that with their own children. So it does look different for my grandchildren, but I'm really grateful, really thankful that they've got so many, they've got their uncles and Auntie Amy, and their great parents and other grandparents around them to pick up where I leave off.
yeah.
But the travel as well in my 60s, there's other interests and other hobbies that I did try along the way, like as you kids sort of started leading your own lives. I dabbled in lots of stuff, photography and quilting and uh, gardening, and yeah, a few design course and a few other things, and that sort of they had to fall by the wayside, which is different to how I imagined.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it would be kind of impossible to think after 20 years of kind of adjusting to a new life, hard to go back and think about what today could look like
Mm.
without it. And I guess
Yeah,
pointless in a lot of ways, and I know
it
we're very
is.
lucky, but
Yeah, it is actually pointless, isn't it? Because a disability or not, so many, like the one, the actually, well, the biggest guarantee in life is that you're going to die, or the biggest surety. And the next one, really, or at the same time, is change is inevitable. Change happens all the time. So it change in so many ways, whether it's death, divorce, moving countries, moving states, moving houses, so many changes all the time. So yeah, it is futile and one that I don't like to dwell on.
mm,
But for the purposes of this podcast, I thought it might be interesting to really be able to examine the person as the person and not as the disability, just to see where their thought patterns were. It also helps to understand people who grow up with a disability, how their thought processes were as well of growing up with a disability, because that's quite a different point of view again,
yeah.
especially when you don't feel like you fit in, when you don't see yourself represented in TV or, amongst your peers, that sort of things.
Yeah. But given this podcast is the one about you, we'll get to those stories. But this is a complete diversion. I'll get back to the questions soon. But do you feel that in terms of the growing up, it's a different kind of ball game, but do you kind of feel out of not seeing yourself represented in things? And do you feel it, or do you understand it as an issue affecting others with disability?
I definitely, yeah, no, I do feel it and I do understand it as an issue. Yeah, with my age, because another thing that sort of happens too as you get older, especially being a woman, is, that invisibility type thing. And if you're disabled, when you're disabled, I feel like there's definitely a real big wallop of condescension, regardless of age, I guess, but I think it's a bit more magnified with age. Um, and I think, yeah, I think it's hard to, yeah, it's definitely, it's like it's still there. It still is a problem. You go places, people have stairs, they don't have a ramp yet. They finish the phone call saying, "Oh, well, no problem. Yeah, we can't help you. There's no alternative. No problem. See you later." And it's no problem for them. And they really, really aren't impacted, don't see why we would like to, why a disabled person should not be treated the same as an able bodied person.
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of fighting for the things that able-bodied people really take for granted,
Yeah.
like being able to just go for breakfast with your friend
Yes. Yes. That's
or
right.
whatever it is.
Spontaneity. Spontaneity is the biggest, like LGMD and lots of disabilities like this take away a huge amount of, like, so much, robs us of so much. And one of it definitely is spontaneity. And then whether you're spontaneous, whether you try and be spontaneous or not, whatever activity you do, the the fatigue and the tiredness that comes with it, and you're still not. There's still always something else that you're worried about while you're doing it. There's still you never. I feel like, from my perspective, I'm never fully in the moment because you're either a bit uncomfortable, you need to adjust something, you need to wait for that person to finish the sentence so you can ask them to scratch your forehead for you, or you don't want to interrupt, what's going on, or there's just a lot to it. Yeah, or you feel uncomfortable, so you don't want to say anything at all about the fact that you might want to leave half an hour earlier, or that sort of thing. Yeah,
Yeah, I think there's so many layers to disability that no one really understands. I mean, even I think we're pretty close. We spend a bit of time
yeah,
together
I
and
think
we
so.
talk a lot, but even I think there's a difference between understanding it on a rational level and feeling it. And without that, I mean, you're kind of reliant on the empathy of strangers, which, in the absence of legislation and policy and all of those important things, you kind of reliant on, yeah, the empathy of strangers, which uh, is a tough spot to be in because it would be great to be able to rely on that, but
It's not.
not ideal when it's your only option.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And fortunately, there are a lot of, and surprisingly sometimes, there's people, as you say, strangers that are amazingly inclusive and understanding and, and really helpful and that sort of thing. It's also being disabled is also a bit of a journey into just seeing the virtue in people, the
Mm.
virtues, the kindness and the generosity and that sort of thing. So it's a bit of both. A bit of, yeah. It's interesting. It definitely makes you think a lot, or makes me think a lot more philosophically about life. I don't know.
Mm.
That could be part of my age too. I don't know, but yeah, it definitely makes you more philosophical, I think.
You've been reading too many books that Jake's given you. All of his beloved philosophy.
Your
Socio
brother and his
is my
philosophy.
brother for listeners, mum's
Yes.
son. And shout out to Mitch. I don't want to feel like we're only talking about Jake on this podcast. He gets
Well,
enough
we
air.
didn't mention Mitch, and he's furnished
Sure,
us
he's
with
okay.
2 beautiful grandchildren,
Okay. So I
but
think,
he's got a lot of other attributes apart from that.
yeah, no, he's okay. So I think that's an interesting point around gaining kind of perspective and a more philosophical approach to life. And probably I think even as a semi-outsider, it's given me that too. And I think that kind of, I don't want to be one of those people who are telling you that maybe this was your purpose. Maybe you were meant to be disabled, because what a joyous thing to hear from an able-bodied person. Now looking back with that kind of 20 years of perspective and reflection and thinking and analysis on your life and what it looks like and how this has impacted kind of every aspect of your life as you kind of knew it and your life as you thought it would evolve to. What's one thing you wish you knew at 40 when you were diagnosed?
When I was diagnosed, wish I understood the concept of ableism, of being an ableist and being a self-ableist, which is to say, being ableist really is, I hope I'm going to define it clearly enough, is thinking of the lack of physical abilities or disability full stop as in pejorative sort of terms in relation to a negative sort of framing, which is to say, when I started not being able to pick up the hose and water the plants properly, thinking that I was being, what's wrong with me, stop being lazy, why did I want to sleep longer in the mornings and that sort of thing. Why didn't I want to do as many things? Go out twice in a day. Sort of be putting off that second outing to the shops or wherever it might be, and then you kind of realize it's because you instinctively knew you needed to conserve your energy. That it's an effort to do all these things. And there's so many things that I beat myself up about. But the other thing also is, if I'd recognized myself as ableist, then maybe I wouldn't have felt ashamed of being unable to do certain things like, going to girlfriends' places and that sort of thing. I've sort of felt a bit of shame or, yeah, just like I was letting myself down and them down um, by not being as involved in things as I would have liked to. I definitely would like to have known what ableism meant and be able to overcome that, like, from the outset. Also, I wish I'd known how much money we were going to waste, as this is a progressive neuromuscular disease and it has a million stages and they all end up being more downhill. And just when you think you've got one stage down pat and you've bought the level of equipment that you need for then bang, you get the next stage and that becomes defunct. Sometimes in a matter of weeks, and then you've got to buy something else. There's a huge amount of money that we personally have spent, and the NDIS as well, in keeping me going, basically. So I wish although maybe knowing how much money we were going to waste might not have been helpful, because I don't really know what the other alternative would have been, unless we might have tried to hire some things, knowing that they weren't going to be lasting for that long. I don't know.
Mm.
Yeah.
So do you think, I guess there's a kind of a part of that about listening to your body, but also giving yourself some grace as you're
Mm,
navigating kind of
that's true.
what is a massive kind of unfathomable.
Yes, that's true. And your dad definitely helped me with that a lot. He recognized that need a lot sooner than I did.
Mm,
Gary saw that, like, there were things he took over straight away, kind of thing, as soon as he noticed them, to allow me, the mundane sort of things, to allow me time to spend my energy on things that were more fulfilling than,
mm.
getting clothes in from the line, or, washing the dishes, or whatever it might have been. Cooking. He's actually a much better cook than me anyway, so that worked out nicely. Thanks,
Yeah,
LG.
would have been good for him to have spent more time cooking growing up. Um,
Yeah.
no,
Oh,
thank you
yeah,
for
so
everything you did.
what's wrong with spaghetti bolognese and, beef stroganoff every day of your
17
life?
nights in a row. I think that I just lost my train of thought
Well, that bodes well for you when you're 60.
around giving yourself
Some
grace.
great.
That's what I was gonna say. So, with the little things that you're talking about kind of letting go of and that kind of thing, was that hard though? I think there is an element of giving yourself grace and probably knowing that you're tired and you need to relax and that kind of thing, but you're also pretty stubborn. So was there kind of an element, not and stubbornness, but also was it hard to kind of come to terms with, I guess, that maybe you can't be taking the washing off the line and kind of letting go of
Mm,
really kind of normal
yeah,
day-to-day things?
yeah. Well, they were all those things were who I was. Like, I was the sort of, we were in a sense the old traditional, I guess, sort of supportive wife of a corporate guy type thing, and I enjoyed that role. Like, I enjoyed it. I worked and I did other things and volunteered and did things like that, but I enjoyed it. And I liked the way I hung the clothes out. I liked the way I, worked in the kitchen, worked around it, and vacuumed, all that kind of stuff. And I actually enjoyed being active. So
Mm,
it was incredibly hard. It still is to this day. It's very, very hard now. Now I have people feeding me, and, give it like, I drink coffee through a straw with someone holding the cup. Everything's incredibly difficult, and you've got to stop. And even the way people cook, like, you know, my, what is it, eggs on toast. There's sort of a certain way that's better so that it's not as cold, that it's, so it stays warm. And I try and, with the support people, try and sort of explain that. That's tiring in itself, but that's such a little thing. And I don't want to come across as a princess either. And hopefully I don't. But it's all those little things. And, yeah, it just, that was what we were talking about, wasn't it? Yeah, like letting go. So, yeah, that's probably not much. That's probably less to do with ableism, isn't it? And more to do with just, relinquishing jobs that you feel that you've always done.
yeah. And I
And
think it's about,
the stuff you take for granted too.
yeah, I think that is probably if I don't know, it sounds to me like there's a bit of a balance between giving yourself grace to not do things when they're tiring, but at the same time, kind of holding on to things for as long as you can because
Yeah,
it
because
also kind of
you probably,
marks the shift of a new kind of chapter, which I
yeah,
can't imagine is easy to grapple with.
yeah. And the longer it went on, like the early stages was sort of a bit easier to adjust to each of those slides.
Mm,
But as time's gone on, it's become more difficult, and you really realize that there is no going back. And every slide is on top of a mountain of slides.
mm.
We're sliding, which is going down, and I'm creating a mountain. I'm not quite sure. That analogy is
Slide
going,
down a mountain.
yeah, true, but isn't it's getting steeper.
Anyway, let's not get stuck on analogies, but if
I
we're
think we
thinking
know what I mean.
if we're thinking about slides on top of slides on top of a mountain. What do you think has been the most pivotal of those slides? Or what has been, do you think, the most kind of pivotal moment since you were diagnosed?
I've got to say, out of everything, as shocking as it was to be told I had muscular dystrophy, because there was still I was still feeling okay. It was just weight loss that was the main kind of catalyst for me to start getting investigated. And as shocking as that was, it was actually the moment that I couldn't transfer anymore at all. Like I could not, for love nor money, lift myself from my wheelchair to my shower commode, from my manual wheelchair. That day was really awful. I didn't enjoy that day. Neither did your dad. But that was, from that, and that was quite a few years in. And I'd been scooching around the house in the manual chair at that stage. And then we'd take it and one of you would push me when we'd go out to the shops, because my arms, with LGMD, it affects your arms as well towards the later stages. And then, yes, I'd scooch around the house, but I'd still be able to, with my arms, rise from figure out a way to rise from the chair and sort of get across safely to the shower commode. And then that day I just couldn't. So that was huge. Then I realized I needed someone. Needed someone to help me in the toilet. And that was where your cousin, our niece, came in and helped me with that. Initially, that was a really big call, that whole extremely private, personal sort of what activity that we all do, and we kind of don't really need that shared. That all happened in the same sort of day or two, really. So, yeah, that's my most pivotal and the most memorable out of everything.
It's interesting. It's funny how it's moments, I don't know, people wouldn't even think about
Yeah,
in
yeah,
terms of the kind of details and
yeah,
nuance of a disability journey. But
yeah.
thanks for sharing.
There you go. Yep. Maybe we'd never discussed that one. You seem like you're surprised at that.
I don't remember discussing that moment particularly.
Well, I didn't really discuss a lot, did I? Until
No, you didn't.
you
Thanks.
basically
Actually,
giving
that
it to
is
me.
where I want to take this podcast. No, you didn't discuss it. No, I do think, yeah, no, but I think when you're grappling with something like that and you're trying to process it with that and kind of both of you work through what it means, it's hard, if not impossible, to bring other people in on that process before you're ready. So
Yeah.
I
And your
think
kids are all traveling and in and out and, overseas and uni and all that kind of stuff too. So it's not something you sit down and go, this was a fun day, guys.
so you're blaming us for being busy.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. No, I think that, I think every family is different and every person is probably different. There are probably some people who would really like to sit down um, and have that discussion and kind of have family update meetings and that kind of thing. And
And
I
really
think it
work
depends
through
on
it.
how you process it. And
True. Yeah. Because that could help a lot of people work through it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think it's interesting because I think all of us have similar ways of processing stuff. And
Mm,
I don't think we are a family that sits down and talks about our kind of deepest feelings that day.
yeah.
Probably because you, for a lot of years, didn't have them. So I think,
I didn't
and
have
we can get to
feelings.
that. No, I think there are members of our family who perhaps don't have the deepest feelings about some stuff. And then there are members of our family who make up for that.
Well and truly make up for that.
Myself and dad being
Yeah.
the loudest, but Jake kind of doesn't, hold any prisoners either. But
Emotional. In the emotion.
in the emotion stakes, no, but I think it is interesting and will be interesting to kind of unpack, I think, with other people about how they process it. Because some
Yeah.
people do like to talk it out. Some people like to process it with themselves or with one other person and then kind of
Yeah.
bring people in when they're ready. And I think that
Yeah, that's
being
true.
on the journey as kind of a family who are in varying degrees affected by this, I think it's been interesting for us as a family too, to see how that's evolved and how we all kind of process it in our own ways and together too.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it really is very interesting, and I think that we will find, the variances, as you're saying, as we go through the podcast in how people do things and why.
So, I think we've talked a bit about how grim it is to have a pretty profound disability, which I think is important and the purpose of this podcast. But I also think you're a really optimistic person innately, but I also know that sometimes it takes a lot of work um, for you to get there as well. I think you, from my observations, seek optimism and joy in things, but obviously it gets harder as life gets harder. But where do you find hope and joy in a kind of day to day? And on a bigger scale, where do you find it?
Thought I had something straight up for this. Well, I probably do actually. In you kids, like definitely in, the things that my family is doing, that gives me, and the grandchildren especially, like now more especially, I guess, just because little kids are pretty fun to have around. Like, and
Yeah, they've really stolen our limelight.
they have stolen your lane. You being the youngest, you've really felt it, haven't you?
I
Felt it.
have. Thanks for noticing.
Yeah, that's a big source of hope and joy. But for me personally, also my friends, very much like they give me a lot of, like, still having the laughs, and I have got a great collection of friends, and including my sister, who have been able to sort of help me, take this, take this journey with me, and sort of understand, try and understand as much as I can, and being really helpful. Like now I've got friends who'll come over to, like, travel for, a good couple of hours to come and have lunch with me. Whereas once upon a time I would, travel their way, but it's just getting harder for me with pressure issues and that sort of thing. So the hope and joy is in connection, really connection with those closest to me, and connection with my community. Doing the radio show last year was great. I'm hoping, this podcast is a selfish exercise in a lot of ways. It keeps me busy. I am really getting to the point now where, apart from reading and watching, streaming services, there's not a lot else that I can do. I can direct people to help me garden and that sort of thing, which is also another place of hope and joy. That gives me joy, being around the plants and green things. That's really helpful. That's great. I think hope and joy. It's about. I think I just naturally. There's a lot of stuff around me, a lot of things that that are beautiful. I think around me in nature, my family, community, and also what's giving me hope. The more I've kind of become immersed in the disability advocacy area, what gives me hope is that there are so many more people, so many great voices, like much bigger voices than me. And that sort of gives me hope that the future, and also including people like Eliza Hull and Sally, called The World We Build. There's a few children's books now that are just fantastic, like so great, so inclusive, beautifully designed. So I think, my grandchildren's generation gives me a lot of hope too for the future. Inclusion, which gives me hope, full stop.
Well, I fear the answer for this because I fear I might be a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, but who couldn't you live without then?
No, I really have to hands down say your dad.
Thank God, because if toddlers
If it
came
was
in,
toddlers,
no, they're great.
no, I probably would last half a day if they were the ones I was relying on. No, who couldn't would. It's definitely got to be dad. And at the stage I am with in my LGMD journey, which is fairly late stage, with a lot of comorbidities, a lot of things going on with, food, swallowing, air intake, pressure injuries, liver cirrhosis, which is it is a terminal illness, and somehow associated with, well, they're not really sure, like, because I've got an undiagnosed subtype of limb-girdle muscular dystrophy that could end up being a metabolic disease that they hadn't heard of yet or something. But anyway, And because of all that, there's absolutely no doubt that I would be dead now if I didn't have the level of care that I get. That's no hyperbole at all. If I didn't get the care I get, and that's predominantly because your dad looks after me. We worked out the hours of a week. 84% of my week, that's including nights, overnight, is your dad, and the other 16 are paid support people. And that's because we feel that no one can do it as well as, we can. And also, yeah, and it's true, like you end up, the other thing, you sort of end up being a bit of a commodity, feeling like you're a bit of a commodity as well, being passed around each week, each day, to having like 3 different support people, which is what I would need. I need 24/7, people around me. So yeah, I'd need 3 8-hour shifts a day. And generally you couldn't rely on just 1 or 2 people for that. So it would just be a revolving door of people that you were constantly explaining things to, and, possibly making mistakes and that sort of thing. So you know, literally, and I guess spiritually, feel like I couldn't live without Dad. So there you go.
Fair enough. The daily apparels don't hurt either, but in terms of being delivered one, and I love to be a co-beneficiary when I'm there.
You do.
But no, you're quite a phenomenal team.
A girl's
So
girl's got to have fun.
not surprised. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So
So,
that's what I did.
well, switching it up to finish, because I know we are getting close to time, a
Yes.
few rapid fire
And this
questions.
is already going to be longer than I imagined the episodes will be. So strap yourselves in, everybody,
Yeah.
because who knows what the rest of the series is going to be like.
Well, some rapid fires, and these are rapid fire. I know you're not the best at rapid answers, but
No,
what device or gadget makes your life easier?
I just have to say generally technology, more specifically my computer, the trackpad, voice control with Siri. Definitely, yeah, definitely
Yeah. What resource has helped you navigate MD the most?
a good OT,
Occupational therapist?
occupational therapist, and I have had a couple of pretty ordinary ones and have very quickly shopped around to find the right ones. So I definitely recommend that resource, and a good grounding yourself in researching through, online on what you think you need, because quite often we've found our own solutions to things. And as far as community sort of resource goes, Women with Disabilities Victoria have been help in terms of feeling a bit connected to a community, which does help you navigate the, being disabled. The LGMD Awareness Foundation, which is an American-based organisation, but they're got great resources there, including a list of their Facebook groups and other other podcasts and other websites and blog sites and Instagram, I guess. Yeah.
Pretty
Those
good.
resources have sort of helped me a bit.
And for people listening, get used to hearing the tap taps of Hadley in the background on these podcasts. It's just mum's favorite little dog
Yes.
just tapping around back there on the floorboard. So you might hear that a little bit as she
You
comes and
enjoy
goes.
that, everybody.
Last question, mum. What is your one piece of advice for people newly diagnosed?
Be kind to yourself, give yourself grace, as you were saying earlier. Be kind to yourself and don't blame yourself. And I just hope, I don't know how you can advise people to have this. I just hope anyone newly diagnosed has got a great support network, or the similar level support that I've always had, because I feel like that's been vital. So if you feel like you could create it, if you don't feel like you've got it, then that's a really good piece of advice. I don't know how helpful that is, but that's
No, I think that's very helpful and a perfect note to
to end.
end on, I think.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Amy Watson, daughter of me, Leanne
Thank you,
Watson.
Leanne Watson, mother of me. I love you. I am very excited for this podcast. I think a
Yes.
lot of people will get a lot of stuff out of it.
I
So
hope
thanks for
so.
having me on the first one.
Well, thank you for interviewing me, and I hope people found it helpful. And please drop me a line and let me know. And I'll have links in the show notes to all the websites that I talked about. And hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Have a great
You
day.
did a great job.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of You, Me and Muscular Dystrophy. I hope you enjoyed our great discussion. I'll leave any show notes down below, and as always, please contact me through leanneswheellife.com, through Instagram, leannes_wheel_life, to provide any feedback or ask any questions, or perhaps to be a guest yourself. Take care till then.